Wow. Jeremy and Joe. Joe's off the rest of the morning, hanging out with you, talking about the Bills' move to fire Sean McDermott and chart a new course, which, again, whether it's shock, disappointment, excitement, it might all be kind of jumbled in. We're going to take a few minutes to talk with Mike Catalana on the Wester Hotline. Mike Catalana of WHM in Rochester and Buffalo Plus on YouTube. Mike, we usually talk at training camp, and I'm sure we will again this upcoming year. Where were you when you heard the news? And you don't have to say listening to us. You don't have to say that. But it'd be nice if you did. Where were you, and how did you take it initially?
Yeah, well, I'm listening to you guys a lot, and that morning I was sort of getting my coffee ready to go, and the next thing you know, it's sort of mayhem, and I got Dan and Janet together, like round up the troops, and we went live on our podcast. I think all of us were stunned.
Yeah,
I think that's the word most people have used, and I would agree. Not that we didn't think at some point this could happen with Sean McDermott. I just didn't think this was going to be the point.
Yeah, there seems to be a general consensus, like NFL circles, that McDermott did a good job with this year's team, given their shortcomings, given whether it's injuries or roster holes. That sure, they didn't win the division, but they still won double-digit games, and they did all right. That said, did you find the overt pointing out of roster problems? Maybe it wasn't overt, but McDermott's comments, his shots that he would take here and there, did you find that to be surprising or an indicator that we would get to this point?
I was a little surprised, only because at least publicly that's not been Sean's way. And listen, to some people, if they don't speak fluent McDermott, they might have been like, oh, I didn't think that or whatever. Most of the people in the media room, certainly, and I know you guys, could hear that. And I think there was a sense of frustration. Now, I thought there were roster issues until I heard Ian Rappaport, and I'm like, wow, I can't wait to cover that team because that sounds like they have a great roster. So, I was sort of on the page of roster issues and especially things at the margins that really hurt them. But, yes, I was a little bit surprised that that's the way Sean went.
Yeah. And here we have Vic Carucci reported, has in his piece that McDermott, Bean, and Pegula met, and McDermott expressed concerns over the roster being good enough to win a Super Bowl and that they did not sit well with Bean and Pegula. And Bean ends up staying. So it's his show now. They go with a power structure where Brandon Bean is president of football operations. I'm not sure. People seem to think he might bring a GM underneath him. What do you think they should do at head coach? If they had their best, the number one choice, no fallback, they get exactly what they want, what's the right answer for them?
Look, it's got to be somebody that Josh Allen is fully on board with. And we don't know what Josh's thoughts were on this. I know he had a close relationship with McDermott. That doesn't mean that he didn't believe that at some point there would be a change. So I don't know. It is something to just say we're going to bring in this guy and this play caller, and maybe it's Clint Kubiak, and you believe that this can be the case. But, you are taking a risk here. We talk about Josh's prime and all those things that go with him, and you feel like he can handle almost anything. But at the same time, this clock is ticking. This team, while we say they haven't gotten over the top, has been in a position to get over the top all these years in a row. The new guy starts there. Yeah. The pressure is on right away with the new coach. I don't think you're giving them this 3-year runway to say, let's go a little farther than they've done. So that's why I feel that it feels to me, got to be an offensive guy is the way I look at it. And I don't know in terms of who's out there, if this is the greatest year to be looking for that guy as your head coach coordinator.
Yeah, does that – I don't know that they would so calculatedly do it when there were a better crop of coaching candidates. It's almost like by bringing up that point, we wished it was more planned, and this seems like it was, a powder keg that ultimately just blew when it blew.
Yeah, and oddly, it ends in a year where there was no big 13-second moment for McDermott, where the quarterback for once wasn't that Josh Allen. Obviously, he had some issues in that game, and that's the way it went out. And what has Bean always said? You go out, tells you a lot about what you are as a team. and let down by the pass catchers again, and no pass rush is how they went out, right?
Yeah.
So that's the part that's why I kind of go to, wow, was this the year? But they decided to do it. So there are guys out there. I'm sure there's a lot of people who would love to get their chance to coach Josh Allen. We'll just see what the plan is. And like you said, hopefully in the next few days, because whoever you're looking at, like, names go off the list pretty fast, or certainly the opportunity to talk to them.
Yeah, unless it's a Super Bowl coach, in which case you're moving into February for that, which maybe they would, like Clint Kubiak. Mike, how do you buy the idea that they have a roster good enough? Like Bean said, and at the trade deadline, he believed it was a championship roster. And I don't know how you would say no in that spot. I don't exactly know what the answer from a GM should be in that moment. Maybe he should be prepared for that question. But he says yes. And if he's asked that question this week, could he possibly seriously say yes?
I don't believe there's anyone neutral in the league who would say championship roster. Now, Josh Allen elevates every part of your roster, right? So you do have Josh Allen. And it's almost unfair to say, well, take Josh Allen off the roster, because you could do that with a lot of teams and take the quarterback no matter how good he is. But I don't think top to bottom Brandon Beane feels that way. He wants to feel that he has that or the potential for it. But, when you talk about elite players, I think of a championship roster being solid everywhere and great in spots. And I think they are above average, certainly everywhere on offense except wide receiver. And I think they have the potential for a few pieces on defense. But certainly on defense, it's not elite at all. I mean, you were putting that thing together with guys who came in before Brandon Beane even got hired in Buffalo, and you're using them in key roles. So, no, it is not championship. I get it. Sometimes you want to say that, encourage your team. Obviously, the Sean McDermott answer when we were in the news conference with him where he said, I love my players, does tell you, I think, where he is. So, hey, listen, it's on Brandon Beane, that part now, in finding the coach, but also he knows that there are things in this roster that need to be better, and that continues certainly with this year's draft and free agency.
Mike Catalana joining us on the Wester Hotline of WHAM in Rochester and Buffalo Plus on YouTube. Mike, on Brian Daboll, I mean, he's going to be, like you laid out, offensive guy, Josh sign-off. He had a head coaching stint. He did end a playoff drought for the Giants and won a playoff game, but then it kind of went terribly. And I don't know if, the shine has come off of that for Bills fans. Of course, it would be a callback to a time where we saw Josh be great. So I feel like there's an element of it that would harken back to this guy knows what to do with Josh. The question is, what becomes of the defensive staff? What happens from there? Like when he went to New York, did he work with Wink Martindale, who he had never worked with before? I don't know what kind of staff he would assemble to work with Brian Daboll, and I don't know how Bills fans would take it.
I think it's really interesting. I think Josh Allen would love to work with Brian Daboll again. And listen, it did not go well, the second part of the Giants, but no matter how much people try to paper over some of this stuff, the Giants over the last decade plus are the Jets with better uniforms, right? Let's stop pretending they're the New York Football Giants. I mean, they have been a joke in the NFL, and we give passes to people who leave the Jets. I think the same thing, not a pass, but we put that parameters on it and go, yeah, but it was the Jets. Well, that's the same with the Giants. They have been a poorly run organization making terrible decisions one after the other. Now, maybe they fixed it now with Harbaugh. We will see that they've had to do that. But I think part of that was on Daboll. But part of that is he also, I would think, has learned. And we've been, I've been told that he learned a lot about what it is to be a head coach. I think he learned a lot about what Sean McDermott really went through that maybe he didn't realize as much when he was the offensive coordinator. I think all that would help him. And Jeremy, it also depends, where's Josh on all this? I mean, we haven't heard from him. And I can't imagine you make these moves without somewhat your quarterback being aware of what's going to happen. But I would say having Brian Daboll is not the worst thing in the world for Josh Allen going forward and to try to get this offense, no matter what the numbers can say in some cases, back to where Josh Allen is that player with that kind of help for him.
Would you feel elevating Joe Brady is on the list of possibilities?
I would be stunned if they don't technically interview Joe Brady. It is something to see. I mean, he is getting those looks around the league, multiple interviews and all. I think to just look at this team and just say we're going to elevate the offensive coordinator to head coach would surprise me a little bit, but I can't imagine that is the plan going in. I just didn't feel that way during the year, and I don't know how that would be perceived during the year. I mean, in fairness, what we have to give Joe Brady is the idea of, like, we talk about pass catchers and wide receivers. I mean, that's a big part of what he's dealing with, too. So you have to give him that. Whoever comes in, I would assume any offensive guy is going to want more on the roster than he had this year. I guess it could happen, but wow, that would be something when, let's look at it. A few years ago, you had an opportunity. If you wanted to move on from McDermott and elevate the coordinator, it was Brian Daboll when this offense was humming.
Yeah.
And now it's effective, but it's not what we got used to seeing.
Mike Catalana, Mike, one last one for you here. Like,
yeah.
As we look at coaching changes around the league, often a coach will come in and talk about changing the culture. And this spot, that will not be something a coach, I think, will want to pound the table and say, I'm going to change the culture. The job will be, sure, have your own, but to keep a good one. And you posted yesterday on Twitter about how McDermott was kind of like the soul of this organization and how important he was to that. And I wonder how these coaching candidates will view, anytime you go somewhere, you think, like, I got time to make it my own. And any coach coming in, that's one spot where maybe Brian Daboll would know that culture well, as opposed to Clint Kubiak, Nate Scheelhaus, like a newcomer walking in the door here. I just wonder what they would think about, your job is to kind of keep this thing where it's been, but also make it yours. And that gets kind of, I don't know, that gets murky to me.
It does. Look, the new coach inherits Josh Allen, inherits the talent that they have, inherits the winning, at least, mindset, but he doesn't inherit the culture. And that takes time and time with the players. And that's unfair to think somebody's just going to walk in and have what McDermott had. I do think there's too many people who dismiss that and just say, like, oh, I'd rather have this and that. Sure, you want to get to the Super Bowl. Everybody does. And you'd take the 1 year of whatever it is if you could get to the Super Bowl and not worry about that. But this is the reason they've been in play. And I think you can get a great play caller. You can get changes to schemes and all those things. But if you don't have that game in, game out, this is the NFL. No matter what, like, silly things Ryan Clark said about it being like all on Josh Allen. Like, you need the other guys. And that comes with that. That doesn't mean this new coach can't build that. And they absolutely can. And some guys are good at it and doing it quickly. But that's going to take a little time. And I think a self-aware coach coming in knows that that's what they have to do. And with the right veteran players, it can happen. And Jeremy, players are adaptable. They're going to get a new coach. They're going to be as all in as they can be, but it's going to take a little while.
Absolutely. Mike Catalana on the Western Hotline. Mike, thanks very much.
All right, anytime.
We'll talk soon.